Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephen Halasnik, and I'm co-founder and managing partner of Financing Solutions. Financing Solutions is the leading provider of lines of credit to nonprofits. Our line of credit program is easy, inexpensive, and costs nothing until used, making it a great cash backup plan for your nonprofit. If you'd like to learn more about the program, please visit us at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. And if you decide to apply today, we will even give you a $250 credit on file. Or feel free to give us a call at 862-207-4118. Just remember the time to set up your line of credit is today so that you have the line of credit ready for when there's an emergency or whenever an opportunity actually comes up. Today, I am excited to be speaking with Tanja Sarett from Synergies and Philanthropy Consulting. Tanja is a nonprofit and fundraising consultant and a certified fundraising executive. Tanja is an on-site and virtual facilitator, trainer, and executive coach who is an Association of Fundraising Professionals master trainer and a 21 by 64 multi-generation giving advisor. Tanja has worked in the nonprofit and foundation field for more than 25 years with organizations in North America, Europe, and Israel. She is the founder of Synergies and Philanthropy Consulting. Tanja has presented at national venues and international organizations, and her work has been published in several fundraising publications such as the Nonprofit Times and many others. Tanja, welcome to today's Nonprofit MBA podcast.
Steve, it's a pleasure to be here this morning. Thank you.
Great. Today's topic is a great topic, as it usually always is. And today's topic is what nonprofits can do online to cultivate donors. Does it surprise you when you see that many nonprofits have not started working online yet for fundraising?
Well, I think it's important to differentiate a little bit what it means to be online. There are so many different opportunities in the online space these days for nonprofit organizations that it's a little bit of an apple to orange comparison. So many organizations, in particular, when COVID started about a year ago, have moved rapidly into the online space. Many organizations have been in the online space before COVID and have been engaging donors through, regular webinars, some online update series or events like that. And COVID just repositioned organizations as a whole to embrace that online space much more. So you saw all of a sudden in March coming up, there was this big concept of what are we doing with our fundraising events that were scheduled for April, May. And that kind of started this big push to figure out how to raise money online and to pivot very, very quickly. So there is the one aspect of real fundraising in this online environment through, again, fundraising galas, fundraising auctions, anything like that. And there's the other component to it where really my focus comes in. It goes to online donor engagement. So instead of looking at just what is the bottom line, what am I getting out of the event from a financial point of view, that really is the focus of galas. As an example, they have to raise funds. I mean, most of these funds are raised already before the event, but sometimes, individual smaller donations come in during the program itself online. And I'm looking at what is really happening before and after big virtual fundraising events like this. How can we use the online space to cultivate donor relationships and make sure that we as an organization continue to have really solid and strong and meaningful connections and ties with our most important friends, supporters, funders?
Yeah, so maybe you could give me some example of some nonprofits that you've worked with where they weren't doing any type of online fundraising, and maybe an example of what they were doing, and then how they either integrated online fundraising or they really went to online fundraising.
Right. So I think, again, my differentiation is here that in terms of in the fundraising world, fundraising is a very broad, as you know, a very, very broad field, has so many different aspects to it. But if you look at major donor fundraising, and that's really my sweet spot, it's all about donor engagement and building relationships long before a gift is being made, before an opportunity is presented to a funder. So because it's all so relationship based and not transactional, the key is now in this time of COVID and social distancing, how to make sure that these relationships really are solid and strong. And what I found and again, it goes back to like the differentiation between the core fundraising events and donor cultivation, that donors as a group, and again, there are all differences and, nobody is the same, but, we put them in like a little bit of a generalization. Donors are looking for an organization that fulfills their dreams, that resonates with them, in terms of their cause, their mission. But at the same time, people are also very tied to an organization because of the people who make up the organization. And it could be the leadership, it could be fundraising staff, it could be other donors that really set this organization apart and create a stronger bond with the organization. And that's where I'm coming in. And to give you an example, because of this difference, what organizations have done successfully, I would say, in particular organizations who have a more regional, national, and even international donor base, is using, as an example, Zoom as a platform to provide regular, 1 hour updates, bring in experts, showcase, what the organization is doing, and staying in touch with their donors and during this, unusual times. However, what is lacking in that moment of connection is the true connection. So it's like a little bit of a one way, event where the organization is in the center, presenting and showcasing, but the donors are sitting back, and I always call it like it's a TV style experience. You have your remote, you press a button, you relax, and the organization is doing the show for you. Um, but from a fundraising perspective, it's so much driven on relationships. There's something that is missing, an opportunity that is not being seized in that moment. And that's why I'm very much an advocate for highly interactive, personal, and engaging experiences online that kind of supplement what you see in the traditional webinars. Again, supplement also, and it's very different from the traditional virtual galas and fundraising events that you see, but put the donor into the center and assure that it's interactive, relationship building, create a lot of peer-to-peer connections so that you leave the session energized and with a great feeling about the organization, but most importantly, a great feeling about the people that are behind or part of the organization.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. That's interesting. So, are you so you could go from the idea of having a presentation with a whole bunch of people on a Zoom call, to individually meeting with all of your top donors individually through Zoom instead of a phone call. And certainly now we can't, meet with them personally, or like you said, if it's international or whatever, it makes it easier. So are you seeing Zoom calls being used a lot more to make it more personal when you're talking about working with bigger donors?
Yeah, so it's what I've seen is that many organizations have tried creating more intimate meetings on Zoom, meetings with a small group of donors, with the CEO, the president, and making it highly exclusive. And that's absolutely wonderful. That's the direction to go into, because again, what it allows is to have a more intimate, personalized experience. What I'm
Hmm.
training fundraisers, and that has been, again, a big focus of mine over the last year since COVID started. I designed a training that focuses on creating virtual donor engagement opportunities for fundraisers. It's all based on a philosophy of bringing in facilitation techniques that are not really part of the fundraising toolbox often, bringing them in, merging them with best practices in fundraising, and creating online opportunities for donors to engage. And when I say engage, really, I'm talking about groups of donors. So I'm not talking just, 5 people, more an intimate meeting with the CEO and president. I'm talking about creating opportunities for different donor segments that can be 25 people, and it can be higher up to 100, because many of these facilitation techniques are absolutely scalable. But what they all do, they break up the online space into intimate moments. So it's about being seen as an individual, as a donor, and having opportunities, very thoughtfully designed opportunities to talk and exchange ideas with others that are similarly either passionate about giving to the organization, or are the ones who are leading the organization or are being served by the organization. So it's that kind of angle where I'm coming in from, and it's different from when you hear often these days about people are concerned about Zoom fatigue, and if it's a team, if it's the donors, they feel like, oh, we can't do much more because people really had it. The initial kind of energy around Zoom in the beginning of COVID is over, and people are kind of zoomed out. Um, and I always argue that zooming out happens when people are not engaged and when people are not being seen. And again, that goes back to this idea of when you have a webinar format where you are not visible, you're not on camera, the organization doesn't recognize that you are there. You don't know if they really, if it makes a difference for them if you show up or not. If you cannot meet anyone else, and you're behind this anonymous kind of webinar screen, you take a step back. I mean, honestly, and I check out. There's only so much of our attention span that can accommodate an environment like this. So I'm coming in to say, use that time, use 60 or 90 minutes and do something very different. You have no parlor meetings right now. You have no social get-togethers with donors that are part of our regular fundraising cultivation events calendar. Recreate them creatively online and show to your donors that this is something very different, and that they will not understand at all that 60 or 90 minutes have passed, because they are so engaged and have such a good time that they will not notice. And they will be grateful of having that human connection that is so much missing during our crazy COVID time. So that's a little bit the benefit of looking at it from a different angle, and putting the donor into the center as a human being, and thinking about, why would somebody at 8 o'clock, I mean, on a Thursday evening, for example, make the decision to log on to Zoom and to be part of something, if they could, relax with a book, or, take a walk or do whatever? What makes it different from all the other programs and offerings that are fortunately nowadays available for everyone?
Yeah, I like what you're saying. I can see a couple things. The first thing is that if you broke your groups down into, Zoom kind of does okay with, maybe up to 6 people on it, where because you can see each person's face on the screen. When you get above 6 people, then everyone starts to kind of get off the screen a little bit. And so I could see where you could break down that group of people into groups of 5, and where you can make presentations. So maybe you have your 5 biggest donors, and they may not even know each other. And
Right.
you kind of you also get into that herd mentality where it's like, people start to be able to meet other donors who are like them, and then they even get to talk about themselves, maybe if you want that. And if nothing else, an introduction, and even ask them why they donate to the organization. And it's just everybody starts to feel, oh, I'm not the only one donating. I'm with these group of people. And, it starts to kind of, and I also like the idea, what you're talking about is, these are the times to experiment with new fundraising techniques and new mediums. I mean, if that's what recessions and well, it's a pandemic, these type of changes facilitate innovativeness,
That is
and
true.
and
I
I
love
and
that. Yes.
yeah. Yeah, and I think too, like I had a really good podcast with a company called Bongiorno, and Bongiorno is a Australian company, but they're doing a lot of work in the United States right now, where they make taking videos and putting it up on your website really, really easy. And they were making a lot of inroads with nonprofits, where nonprofits in the United States were using it to really showcase the work that the nonprofit was doing, so that they can bring the work and services that the nonprofit was easier to the donor base. And so you're really starting to see video become so much more a part of fundraising. And so it makes, before we got on today's call, it didn't dawn on me that, using Zoom is much more, it should be much more part of a donor strategy.
Again,
What do you think about that?
yeah, I mean, again, Zoom is being used. The question is how it's being used. And you're correct that
Yeah.
times of crisis or change have an inherent opportunity of innovation that, that comes along with that crisis, kind of the, you know, the positive, the silver lining of a crisis like we are in right now. And the issue is that organizations who are, or the opportunity, I would say not an issue, the opportunity for organizations who are seizing that moment to pivot and to look for opportunities beyond what they already have done and what's now not possible can propel into the future, because the future will change. I mean, the future is here right now, meaning our
Mm.
nonprofit, how we do business as corporations, as companies, as organizations will never be exactly the same as it was before COVID. What we have learned as individuals and as organizations will stay with us into the future and provide, really new opportunities to build relationships. And it goes back to the core piece. As a fundraiser, you're all about relationships. That's what really counts. Nothing else. Transactional giving is on a smaller scale, but if you go into the idea of transformational giving, giving that really is a more thoughtful decision, you're talking about relationships that carry that decision, and we need to do an excellent job to nourish these relationships and be creative about it. So it's not about using Zoom. It's the idea here is to use a platform like Zoom, and Zoom is the most robust platform out there and with the greatest capability, and bring in techniques from the facilitation world that make this Zoom room, the Zoom experience, a totally different interactive and engaging event for your donors. And that's what my background is. I have this interesting combination of having different, I have not two feet. I actually feel like I have 3 feet. One of my feet is very, very grounded in philanthropy and fundraising. That's what my passion is, and that's my core business. At the same time, one of my other foot is in facilitation. So I'm an innovation person. I look for different techniques to bring from the community of people that inspire me day in, day out, and it pushed me forward in this community of practice to bring these techniques into the fundraising community and use my other foot in the coaching field to kind of create this package that is relevant for organizations. So in terms of Zoom, again, it's not just about inviting people to a Zoom meeting. It's all about designing it thoughtfully from A to Z, from the time you invite them to the time you follow up and to the moment they show up at your event. You have to have a great plan, an interactive, thoughtful plan in place with facilitation techniques that work and are relevant to the purpose of your experience, to unleash people, to unleash their wisdom, to bring them together, to generate conversations, to create a safe space where every donor is being seen. And that takes a lot of planning, a lot of work, but it is worth it because you cannot just rely on these one-way programs. If you are in the midst of a crisis that is going on for so long, we don't know exactly when it's going to end. Hopefully we are in a better place, much better place in the fall, but who knows what's going on. We cannot wait. We cannot wait it out. And that's all what it boils down to. It's being innovative and stretching out or stretching and moving outside of your comfort zone and bringing in other techniques and tools that are not necessarily part of the traditional fundraising toolbox, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, and you're absolutely right. I think you can't wing it, right? You can't wing a Zoom call and say, "Oh yeah, it sounds like a great idea," and then all of a sudden, you start scheduling all these Zoom calls, and people are like, "You know what? That really wasn't worth my time. That
Exactly.
wasn't anything that was that
Yes.
unique." Maybe you could give us a couple of insight as to what would make the Zoom call a little different than a regular phone call, that something that you would do in a meeting with a Zoom that's different.
So if you just look at the core, what's important, again, it's about, for the donor, you have to look at the donor. It's about being seen, being heard,
Mm.
connecting with people, and assuring that the time they spend on Zoom, as an example, that it's a time worth spent. And so if you start out with being seen, I mean, one effort is when you do for donors a Zoom experience, you need a good team and really lay it out exactly the roles and who is doing what, because it's a multi-layered approach and things are happening really almost simultaneously. So I give you an example. Being seen can go from the fact that when people come into your Zoom room after they are admitted, from the waiting room, introduce them, call them out, welcome them by name. Have a staff person or a board member, either use the regular chat to say, "Hi, Paul, so great to see you. I'm so glad you were able to make it tonight." Or have people, figure it out who is sending personal private messages in chat to, groups of donors saying, "Susan, I'm so glad, that you were able to be here. We can't wait for the program. You will have a great time." Something like that makes sure that everyone is seen from the very beginning onwards. It sets you up from a like, wow, they're really excited about me being here. I'm looking forward to seeing what's happening next. And You have to understand that the virtual space is a different animal than an in-person event. What is usually missing is, to give an example, there is a lecture, there is a parlor meeting, and how do people talk and connect is either over food. They grab a food, the buffet before, the hors d'oeuvres, or they sitting next to each other. And on Zoom, this is not really happening. You cannot just casually talk with somebody. So how can you bring that aspect of, let's say, networking into a Zoom experience? And there is a technique, as an example, it's called impromptu networking, where you use two questions that are really relevant. They're not like the chit chat questions of what's the weather and what are you doing, what's your name, but a meaningful question. And you create, rounds of short breakout room rounds, like 3 to 4 minutes with a pair in pairs. So people can talk very quickly, rapidly about the invitation, the questions that you ask, and you change this up to, in 3 different rounds. So people can, let's say, Paul, the donor, is meeting at least, he's meeting John, he's meeting Eli, he's meeting Betty. In 3 different rounds, he might have known them before, he might not have. But what it does is, it builds a rapid connection with somebody, and people, when they come back after these 3 rounds, they all say, "Oh, it was not enough time. It was too short." And I love that because it shows people wanted that. People want to talk more. But what it does also, if you do that in the beginning of a program, people are loosening up. People are like, feel already they're intimate, involved. They have gotten to know 3 people at least. They smile. They loved it. They never did this before for the most part. And so whatever comes next, even if it's a traditional kind of format where you have a guest speaker afterwards, as an example, people are in a much different place already. And it's about creating, bringing in techniques like this that kind of transform the online space into something joyful, meaningful, and that creates interactions. And there are many other tools like this that I use that come out of the facilitation world, that either create, longer conversations, or are ways for people to spend time together in a meaningful way. Because you see very often, and just to make a point of this, you see very often that people are trying to use breakout rooms, but it's just for the sake of hitting a breakout room button and sending people out. This doesn't do a thing. You have to be very purposeful about why you're doing it, what you ask people to do, and what is the purpose of sending them out into breakout rooms in connection to all the other elements of the evening, as an example. So it has to be a real, it has to be grounded in something. Just to say, oh, we let people meet for 5 minutes in a breakout room is like, okay, it's better than nothing, but it doesn't go deep enough. And it's a little bit okay, and it doesn't create the energy. So if you have a meaningful tool, where people can meet each other in rapid rounds, 3 or 4 times in the beginning, people are energized. They love it. They are excited, and this is all what you want them to feel. It's, you want to excite them about your mission. Obviously, that's always important. But you also want to tell them, hey, we're out there. We want to connect with you. We are interested in you. You should meet other people. Other people believe in us. You are a great supporter. Meet those folks. We are all a community, because we can only do so much great work because of you. So yeah, it's all about this. It's about building community, exciting people, and being very, very thoughtful about how you go about it in Zoom.
Yeah, I just for those, just to be clear too, for those who haven't used Zoom a lot, I know someone might say, yeah, but some of my older donors aren't computer literate or they really don't know how to do it. You can call into Zoom too. So just so you know, I mean, and some of the older
And I have to,
donors,
I have, yeah, I have to say,
they
yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting, because
that's
don't be
okay. Go ahead.
don't be afraid about the age of your donors. Don't make a decision for your donors. In particular, in year two after COVID. Um, I have had donors who are in the 90s, highly engaged on Zoom. All what they need is to know how to click on a link. And
Yeah.
people have been, because of Zoom and because of the earlier months of Zoom last year, many donors who are on the older in the older age bracket, they have learned how to connect with their grandkids and their family members on Zoom. So I'm encouraging everyone not to make a decision for your donors. You will be surprised how easy people are now navigating just logging on to Zoom. And that's all what they have to do. You are making it very easy for them. They don't have to know how to do breakout rooms because you will do it for them. So be courageous. Don't overthink it so much. Just plan great, in a really plan in an excellent way, but don't make the decisions for your donors. I'm sorry, Steve, but this is like, it comes up a lot, and I'm always want to say, don't make a decision for your donors, because the age is not a factor these days. Times have changed. And I'm actually, because you mentioned the phone number, I'm actually always encouraging organizations not to provide the phone number,
Yeah.
because again, I want people to be seen. I want people to participate. And I'm only giving out a phone number, if somebody happens to have an audio problem that evening. And, there's somebody on call who gives the phone number out, and they can call in. That's like the worst case scenario kind of situation. You're prepared for that. But I want to see people. This is a different kind of experience. And even if it means that some people are not joining, the majority will embrace it and will be part of it. It's the same thing. You can never create an event that is for everyone. If it's a Paula meeting or a donor mission, you name it, it will never attract everyone. So that's just another encouragement to be mindful about this, and don't let these concerns prevent you from piloting and testing out a program.
Yeah, I mean, we have a couple of minutes left, and I just think that the key, having been on numerous Zoom calls myself, is it's not so much about. I think it's not so much about what you're presenting. That's important, but I think it's about engaging the people on the call. I mean, everybody wants to be heard, and everybody who's on a lot of Zoom calls. Uh, a lot of times your listening can just go so far, and I think people want
Right.
to I think there is an issue with extrovert versus introvert, and then asking an introvert to kind of contribute could be, it might be challenging. And I mean, that's what I kind of think, Tanja. If someone says, you know what, I want to create an agenda for a Zoom call, that they should probably bring you on board to kind of either either facilitate or come up with a good set of how the Zoom call should be run. And that way you're kind of using all your experience to train the executive director. This is how a good call would go on Zoom. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think it's there two ways to it. It's the planning, as I mentioned before, is critically important, and it's a purposefully design of the,
Yeah.
I call them experience. It's not a call; it's an experience. And you can either, you have to, as a fundraiser, providing such an experience, in order to fully get into the swing of it, you have to almost experience it yourself. to fully understand what I'm talking about. And in this way, I've been training fundraisers now from North America, Europe, and also Israel since the summer of last year. So over 150 fundraisers went through my trainings. I spoke to many others, had training sessions, smaller ones, but the longer training sessions really is there to get into the swing, feel it, what these techniques can do, and then help you as a fundraiser bring that to your organization. And yes, there's always an opportunity to bring me in to have me to help me design a program, and it could be often sometimes it's like the first program to get you started on the right track, to kind of kickstart your very engaging online donor engagement experience. And that's totally possible, and that's what what I do. And um I think the key is just, say yes to it, say yes to wanting to try it and experience it. And then there are different ways to go about it. If it's, training, bringing me on, or finding other ways to kind of learn more about what is out there. But I would say doing techniques like this and coming from this facilitation lens and transforming the online space, is a unique angle that I bring to my work as a fundraising consultant. And I hope that in the course of the next few years, more organizations will embrace these opportunities, because, as I mentioned before, Steve, our world has changed. And if you have donors who are not all locally in your city or in your community, people will look for other ways to stay connected. And I believe that people will be also much more mindful and choosy in the future to which event they will go out to. We've now learned that a lot of more is possible online than we ever thought it would be. So it created a new framework, and it's just absolutely exciting to see what innovation wave we're on and where it will lead us. But as long as we don't lose sight of that, we always have to put our donors into the center of all what we do, and it's all about the human connections. So that's kind of a wrap up to this. It's new. Not many have been doing it. I just heard yesterday from a university who has done for the first time a program with the impromptu networking tool that I just mentioned to you, and they loved it. It was a very successful program. I was so thrilled to hear one of the universities that attended my trainings back in a university in Ohio. It's fascinating to see, how these little tweaks and thoughtfully designed elements, how they can just transform connections online and donor experiences. And again, as you see, I'm very passionate about this, and I'm just like want to encourage everyone to tap into it.
Good stuff. Well, it's a really good podcast. I guess before I went on to this podcast with you, I wasn't sure where it was going to go, and I'm really happy that we covered this Zoom, because I think it does make a lot of sense, and it's something that I hadn't really thought of, and I think our listeners are going to be really happy about the idea and gives them some creative ideas. So, I mean, that's all the time we have today. But I'd like to thank so very much you, Tanja, for coming on today. Tanja, of course, owns Synergies and Philanthropy Consulting. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to share it with a friend, and also subscribe to your favorite podcasting app. If you like today's podcast, please feel free to give us a review on your podcasting app to help us get the word out. And of course, if you're looking for a line of credit for your nonprofit, you can call us at 862-207-4118 or visit our website at nonprofitmbapodcast.com. Tanja, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they go about doing that?
So you can either connect with me on LinkedIn. That's a possibility. You can send me an email at Tanja with a J, very important, Tanja at synergiesinphilanthropy.com. You can go to my website. So I think there are different ways to find me. I look forward to hearing from you. Check out the upcoming trainings that I offer, and have a conversation. And I see how I can help you. And we can look, what your donors are, what you have done so far, what you're thinking about in the future, and let's take it from there. I look forward to it.
Yeah, you have some trading courses too, correct? As
Yes,
well.
yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah,
I
and that's
create
on your website.
Yes, I create fertile donor cultivation events, trainings, particularly, on helping fundraisers, empower fundraisers to do it themselves, to have the tools needed to create these engaging donor cultivation experiences online. And that's just, fascinating to see how many have been really energized by these programs and have been, um, gaining the skills needed to make it happen.
Cool. Great. Good stuff. All right, Tanja, thanks for coming on today. I
Thank
really
you.
appreciate it. And to all our listeners out there, thank you for making the world a better place. We certainly need it. We're all certainly coming out of a tough year. Things are improving, and I think we're all happy that things are improving. And these techniques that Tanja showed us today, I think a creative way to keep not only your donors engaged, but also to show you new ways that might lead to other ways of fundraising and donor retention in the future. So everybody have a fantastic day. Stay safe.